So we're about to launch the Leeds Fund. So the Leeds Fund strategic grants, which are going to be focused on resilience. And yeah, it's a really exciting departure from what we do usually as an organization. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Leeds Fund. First of all, in terms of the background. Yeah, so, why are we doing this now? So obviously last year, given the pandemic situation that we were in, lots of communities were facing, severe sort of challenges, and obviously you guys as community organizations supporting some of those communities were struggling, due to the pandemic situation in terms of funding, etc. And we ran a number of pilot projects in 2020, which was a mixture of project delivery, but also emergency support. So things like, supporting with the delivery of food parcels or medicines or essential supplies, etc. But also for the very first time, we kind of departed from our usual project funding and decided to give community organizations core costs. So, not related to any particular project, but just money to allow an organization to focus on their kind of long-term planning and strategy. We funded quite a number of organizations through what we launched as our Resilience Fund last year, and brought those groups together in various kind of workshops and action learning sets. And they provided us with some really useful feedback in terms of how that experience was for them and how useful that money was. And these are some of the things that we were told. So they really valued sort of longer term, more stable funding for core costs, which was also flexible, so that they could then adapt their delivery and their plans accordingly, rather than it being tied down to particular projects. And they really appreciated, the fact that we entered into a very flexible arrangement whereby, we kind of discussed their ongoing plans and any changes that need to be made, and we kind of, built that relationship on kind of mutual trust, I guess. And obviously any funding, comes with some risk. Things don't always go as planned, and, that's fine. And, we're always kind of willing to listen and adapt and kind of work with organizations in that respect. And the final thing that they mentioned was they really appreciated the opportunity to connect in with other people, sort of peer-to-peer connections, learning about what worked, what the kind of best practice was, etc., sharing that experience, but also, linking in with other experts as well. So peer-to-expert connections and, learning about different elements or different aspects of training, whether that were to do with finance or governance or marketing or whatever it might be. Get next. And some of the additional, oh, you've gone too far. Go back. Yeah. So some of the additional learning that we managed to sort of obtain from the sector was obviously, we are a very adaptable and responsive sector. We found last year that many organizations were really adept at adapting their delivery models. So quite a few, sort of moved their delivery online, for example, because they were unable to undertake face-to-face delivery due to, social distancing measures, due to lockdown, etc. A lot of people kind of moved their training and workshops, etc., to an online setting from a face-to-face, and they were able to do that quite quickly. But at the same time, as I mentioned, there's sort of severe challenges as well, because quite a lot of funding that's available is kind of restricted to particular projects, and you can't just spend that how you want or where it's needed. And at the same time, you've got potentially limited reserves, and you're drawing on your reserves as well. Placed a lot of community organizations in a very precarious and vulnerable situation, not due to factors of their own making, but, what was happening outside externally in the economy, and, with staff being furloughed and various other things. And obviously many staff had great ideas and great plans at the start of 2020, and maybe wanted to focus in on particular aspects of their strategy and their operational plans, maybe look at their staffing team and look at, what some of the experience and skills might be missing, what were the kind of gaps, maybe their marketing plan. But then all those were kind of put on hold really in 2020, and, people were just happy to get on with the delivery because there was so much need out there, and they felt that they had to kind of focus in on the doing rather than spending more time on strategic development and planning, which obviously is important in terms of their kind of longer term sustainability and survival. And then the final thing was we discovered that the governance, the kind of relationships and arrangements different organizations had were kind of variable in quality. So some felt that they were very well supported by their trustees and their kind of senior management teams, others less so. And obviously this was brought into sharp focus due to the pandemic crisis, which kind of highlighted a range of strengths and weaknesses. So this all kind of fed into the development of the Leeds Fund. Next. So what are we trying to do with the Leeds Fund? So the Leeds Fund is designed to cover the costs of community organizations being able to take that step back from delivery and have that kind of time and space to undertake the strategic development work that needs to be done to kind of focus on the longer term resilience, sustainability and survival of the organization. And also, the leaders and teams tend to be quite busy. They tend to lack the support and resources to be able to focus in on this, especially when there's a pandemic going on and there's a lot of delivery needed. And these are some of the areas that we feel through the funding of the Leeds Fund, organizations will be able to focus in on. Firstly, reflecting on what's worked really well and for them to gain a better understanding of what makes them a better, more resilient, sustainable organization and to kind of build on those. But also, look at some of the issues and challenges that an organization has been facing and kind of do a deep dive into those and really understand what the root causes are, which would then make them more sort of equipped to be able to deal with them. And although this is kind of unrestricted funding, it won't be totally unrestricted in the sense that, we'd want you guys to come up with a development plan. So identify what are the kind of development objectives and priorities for your organizations to support the longer term resilience and to come up with a plan and work towards it. And obviously it is a plan and not everything kind of, runs smoothly and, all the circumstances change. So it's absolutely fine for you to then kind of learn and adapt your plan as you're kind of delivering this over the next couple of years, in agreement with us. Next. So what's on offer? So there's a grant of £30,000, which is a kind of flat £30,000 over 2 years, 15,000 per year. And it is for organizations based in Leeds and working in Leeds. And it is a relatively short deadline. So 12th of February at 12 noon is the deadline for submission of those applications. And it was launched last week, I believe, on Friday. So it's already on our website under the open grants section. And obviously, these are some of the additional stuff as well as the money. We will be providing access for some organizations to work with local experts and infrastructure support organizations on a range of different topics. So it could be around good governance. These are some of the things that people have flagged last year as, things that might be useful to them. So looking at good governance and accessing, decent trustees, financial modeling, accounting, how to kind of manage their finances through this difficult period, looking at ways that they can apply for and be more successful at securing grants, but also reducing the dependency on grants as well, looking at ways that they could potentially diversify their incomes, generate income themselves, maybe look at other models of funding as well, looking at maybe loans, things like that. That could also be an option. Next. So in terms of who might be eligible, so this is all stuff which is on the website as well. So in order to be eligible for a Leeds Fund grant, the organisation needs to have an annual income in their last accounts, which are between £75,000 and £300,000 per annum. But if it is slightly over or slightly, above the 300k, we could look at this on a case-by-case basis. It won't automatically rule you out because maybe last year was like an anomaly because, a lot of organizations possibly got lots of kind of funny money coming from central government to help with the kind of pandemic, etc. And it's not a true reflection of an organization's average annual income, let's say, for example. So obviously you have to be delivering work that meets the needs and have a clear impact on communities in Leeds. You have to be able to kind of willing to learn and adapt and to actually think about resilience in the long term and to work with other community organizations as well. And it's not just about, maybe one person being really enthusiastic about the funding and putting an application in and developing the plan by themselves. We would want buy-in from across the organization. So maybe some of the trustees, other staff, other volunteers are also kind of buying into this kind of resilience and strategic development work that needs to be done. And as I mentioned, you have to be based in and delivering most of your work in Leeds, been operating for at least a couple of years. And the last point, again, is kind of, alluding towards the kind of commitment required. So there would need to be at least one paid member of staff who can commit a proportion of their time to working with us on this program and focusing on the strategic development work which is required. Okay.